Jujutsu Kaisen Modulo Chapter 7 is here. And this chapter was so good, you guys. So as always, if you do not want spoilers, back out now. The chapter begins with the old man who was getting absolutely worked by Maru in the last chapter, finding a way to escape amongst all the commotion. And he is ducking and weaving through a whole bunch of alleys saying, it's gonna be a game of hide and seek because I'm trying to get away. And the next thing we know, we see a silhouette start coming down the alleyway, and they say, don't move. And the old man goes, what are you gonna do, tell the teacher on me? And the person who is telling them not to move is Usami himself, and he says, don't move once again. And the old man notices Snake Eyes and Fang curse seal on his hand. Usami is using curse speech. And since he said don't move, the old man cannot move, and he cracks bro right in the face. Then doubles down, comes up and just crack, kicks bro straight to the ground like foot to face. He then tells his subordinate Mino, you take care of the rest. We then pan back to Cross and Tsurugi talking, and Cross is holding Tsurugi by his collar saying, what did you just say? And Tsurugi, being who he is, he says, I thought I wasn't supposed to talk to you, huh? That boy cold. Cross then says, what did you mean by neighbor? And I'm not gonna lie, Cross on this next page, he gives me like Anakin as he's falling. He tells Tsurugi, you really think we could be neighbors? You know this country's history, don't you? You've been living peacefully on a path paved by a superpower since the war. What could you possibly understand about us? You don't have to constantly think about protecting your lives. And I'm sure you look down on refugees as being dangerous, filthy, and poor. Even if you wanted to be neighbors, we would refuse. Then, almost as if out of nowhere, Usami pulls up, and he says, dispatch officer Cross. Cross tells Usami, I want to take Maru back to the mothership for treatment. Usami thinks to himself, I don't want the Sumerians to see Maru injured. He says out loud, if he doesn't require any special kind of treatment, we can treat him down here, and we'll do everything we can for him. Cross says, nope, we'll be treating him ourselves. Usami thinks to himself, damn it, do they think we're going to be taking his biological information or something? Pans over to the spaceship. Maru is lying on like a gurney type thing. Cross says, I'm gonna borrow this for a second, and he peels the band-aid off of Maru's third eye and puts it over his, and then he puts his hair back just like how Maru would. So Cross is basically going undercover like Maru. Then I wish I was kidding, but I am not. We literally see Mahito. It's basically like a dream, but he says, damn it, so it's not him after all. Then Tsurugi jolts awake, and he is shocked because he just saw something that he doesn't know yet, but it is something very dangerous, which is Mahito in that vision. And then Cross, who's cosplaying as Maru, he says, Tsurugi, are you okay? And just so this doesn't get confusing, I'm going to call him like Karu or something. And a good big brother goes, where's Yuka? And Karu says, she's being treated, but she's fine. And then being the double agent he is, he says, I heard Cross was here. Tsurugi goes, is he always like that? And Karu kind of like raises an eyebrow like, what do you mean, always like what? And Tsurugi says, always pissed off? Karu says, no he's not, but I guess he has a reason to be. Tsurugi then apologizes and says, Maru, I'm really sorry I accused you of plotting and barging into someone else's turf. I was being closed-minded, and I'm sure you guys have your reasons. And also, you used your curse technique again. Are you going to be punished? Karu says, not yet. And then it shows Tsurugi thinking, and it's like he's anxious. And Yuka comes barging in, and she goes, if it isn't the MVP. Karu acts very excited to see her. She says, I heard you were amazing, even though I didn't get to see it because I was unconscious. And Tsurugi chimes in, he could pass for a grade 1 easy. Yuka asks the boys, what do you guys want to do today? Tsurugi assures her that he can move just fine. Yuka says, we're going to the place you've been begging us to go to, Maru. And since it's Karu, he's like, where? And there's a picture of a Ferris wheel, so yes, they are going to the amusement park. It shows them riding some rides. Then it pans over to Karu, and he says, damn you, Maru, this wasn't on your schedule. Then a little kid's walking by, and he lets go of his balloon, and yes, it's a jack-o'-lantern. Karu nonchalantly catches it and hands it back to the little child. And the kid says, where's mommy? Then we get a hilarious panel of Karu, Yuka, and Tsurugi making a face kind of like this one and goes, where's mommy? Like, it is comical. Yuka tells Tsurugi, your face is too scary. You go stop by the front desk or something for lost children. And Usami's subordinate Mino goes, I'll go too, and he goes running after him. Yuka's trying to be comforting. She tells the child, it's okay, we're gonna find your mommy. Then Karu says, don't cry. What's there to cry about? It's not like your mom's dead. Sit still and be quiet. The little kid then obviously starts crying. Then Karu, being a complete showman, does a perfect backflip and lands in. He draws a little bit of a crowd. People like, does he work here? He's amazing. And you know Yuka's not going to be one up, so she hits an even more perfect backflip. She says, I can do that too, don't get cocky. Just then, the kid's mom shows up, and the kid walks over to Karu and he tries to hand him the balloon, and Karu accepts it. And on the back of the balloon, it says, Happy Halloween. So Karu kind of questions, he goes, Halloween? Yuka calls Tsurugi and is like, hey, the mom showed up, it's cool. Kaoru and Yuka start having a conversation about religion. This all started just because he was questioning about Halloween and they were talking about its origins. And then Yuka says, and what about you, Cross? He kind of like side-eyes her, like, she says, it's totally obvious you're Cross. Tsurugi might not have noticed, but it is obvious. They go on a little bit of a deeper dive into religion. They get into the facts about like some religions being trampled on, or I should say some aspects of religion being trampled on. Cross asks, could you trample on it? Let's say it wasn't a tablet, but it was a living being. She thinks for a second, she goes, I've never thought about it that way. And then Cross says, exactly, you're finally starting to understand. He goes on to say, humans like you have trampled on our life without even realizing. I'm not saying those who have been stolen from have the right to steal, but when you've been robbed, the temptation to steal lingers afterward. So you should be prepared for that. Yuka thinks to herself, did he just declare war? But she keeps her composure and says, I'll just pretend I didn't hear that, and she winks at him. Then says, this is perfect timing, come with me somewhere tomorrow and you might change your mind about that. Cross says, where? And she says, to get a second opinion. And it's the next day and it pans to them at a doctor's office and there's a scan of Yuka's brain up on the screen. Then the next page, the appointment's over and Yuka's like, I didn't really follow what he was saying. And Cross says, I've never heard of that illness. And he says, so it's not cancer. I hear that's pretty common among Earthlings. Is a malignant tumor different from cancer? Yuka says, the problem is the tumor's in my brain. I thought those headaches were just normal. Then we get the bombshell. She only has 6 months to live. Cross asks her, so why did you bring me along? She says, because I don't like to go alone. Cross starts being very negative. He says, even if you have 6 months left to live, your heart died in this very moment. No matter what you do, it'll never be moved like it was before, referring to her heart. Goes on a rant saying like the things that make you smile, the things you find beautiful, none of it will matter. You'll just think, I'm gonna die anyways. She asks him, so is that how it is with you? Cross responds, yes, you've had your future stolen from you too, Yuka Kotsu. She replies, so what will you do then, Cross? Steal even more from people who've been stolen from? Cross goes ballistic here. He screams, don't you dare compare yourself to us. We suffered from a man-made disaster, not some illness or unfortunate accident. Yuka, being kind of a smartass, says, sure, but you said I had my future stolen from me too. Maybe you lost your home, but you won't die. I'm gonna die. Cross responds, you think you're gonna change my mind just because you won some bad luck contest? Yuka tells him, I can't change my situation, but with time, you can change yours. It's okay to be pissed about how it's unfair and to never forget it. But tell me what happened to your people, because we're not enemies. He says, you're standing safely on the opposite shore, and yet you think I can accept your righteous arguments? And the next panel's a text blurb with no picture to it. It says, no wait, she's not on the opposite shore anymore. Cross says, you keep going on about coexistence, but what you really mean is live here on Earth without causing any problems, right? He begins to escalate again and he's like, how long do we have to keep checking our behavior for Earthlings? If we have to spend years and decades living such a miserable existence, then I'll still. Yuka responds, so how long will you still for? Cross becomes a little flustered by this question and he goes, well, Yuka goes on and says, hating people and stealing from them is easy. That's why it becomes an endless cycle. Let's put an end to all of that, Cross. And that is where our chapter ends. So overall, a great chapter, very informational. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments. Peace.